Good afternoon, everyone. Nicholas, thank you very much for inviting us to have the last and final panel for today. We hope that you're all looking forward to the fun panel. I think when you look at us as being representatives for the entrepreneurship panel, we already missed the etiquette of wearing a tie. It's part of being rebellious as an entrepreneur. So the truth is actually I forgot it. So I think we have a very interesting panel. We have Isabelle, we have Sallar, we have Haymon, we have Lucius. My name is Bastian Hagebeuker. I will guide you all through the panel. I think it's very interesting for the fact that we have entrepreneurship represented from different perspectives. We have Isabelle. She's an entrepreneur, started out with her own company. We have Sallar representing an accelerator, very successful international accelerator. We have Haymon representing a corporate venture capital activity, and we have Lucius, who is, I called him yesterday a serial entrepreneur, but he's also now investing and building up companies on his own. So before I say too much, I would like to give all four of you the chance to introduce yourself and to answer maybe 3 questions. The first one is a quick introduction. The second one would be that you tell us what entrepreneurship means for you individually. And then the third one would be, but I can come to that in a minute, where do you want to be with your company or your initiative in 2 to 3 years' time? Isabelle, please.
So I answer all 3 at once. Okay.
Yes, please.
So I'm Isabelle. I studied business administration, but started in shipping 2010. That's due to my family, who is in shipping for many years. And so I worked at ER Capital Holding first, and my uncle's business, Rickmers. First on the financing side of vessels, later on in diverse operational roles, and then as a managing director from 2015 onwards at Schiffahrt. And then when it was sold and became Bunk Management, I stayed until 2019 as managing director, and then I left for setting up my own business. So what entrepreneurship means for me, I think, was the second one, is like you really need to want it. So I always had the interest and passion to set up an own business. I think when you start probably a little naive and think like this would be great, the best adventure ever. But I think going through it, and I also had busy jobs before. It's really it's a route, but it's the best I could have ever done. So I think what is important in entrepreneurship is that you really understand the market and you really understand which problem actually you want to solve, instead of just doing something that's nice to have, and then have a product or a service that basically fits to the customer needs, and also have a good feeling for the timing. I think timing is quite crucial, because there are great ideas, but I think if the timing is not right, then it's not going to happen. And number 3 was?
Where do you want to be in 2 years?
In 3 years.
3 years, okay.
So we want to extend our position as leading marketplace. So Turtle is basically a marketplace for shipping companies and seafarers, where they can, we say, meet directly. So we connect them directly, making use of intelligent use of data. So that is the number 1. Number 2 is we also want to really contribute for eliminating any kind of corruptive demands and illegal recruitment fees in the market, because as part of human rights, I think this is something we still need to definitely look at. And also the number 3 then for my team to grow the business and have the great time that we already had so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Sallar?
Yeah. My name is Sallar Faridi. I am with the Plug and Play Tech Center, and my background is actually shipping. So I've been working in the shipping industry for a couple of years before I went over to the startup side. I've been working here in Hamburg, where I was born and raised in the ship owning business, and then went over to the broker side, mainly focusing on gas and the Middle East. With my Persian roots, it was quite obvious to go into that direction. So number 1, what is entrepreneurship, or what means entrepreneurship for me, is basically it's a lot of things. a lot of things that Isabelle just mentioned, but also for me, characteristically, it means breaking through boundaries or being able to break through boundaries. Because if you decide for the path of becoming an entrepreneur, especially in the tech world, there's a lot of arguments why you should not do it. At least that's the ones that remain in your head or that you hear first. But you should always stick to the point where you decided, or to the reasons that you decided to go for that path. So being able to be restless and go for sleepless nights and having that non-ending hunger to go for that, and the passion, that's for me entrepreneurship. And obviously, if it comes to the technical points of a market and the readiness for your product and the product market fit and the scalability, these are all factors that have to do that correlate definitely with raising capital and with obviously finding customers in the market. And then, where do I want to be?
In 3 years, yeah.
In 3 years. So I'm in charge of our Northern European market, which means that Plug and Play is actually a quite interesting company. We are a family-owned business that started in the VC space, amongst the most active investors in the world when it comes to early-stage investments. And through the nature of our business, we went also into the fields of corporate innovation, which means that we connect over 500 companies and help over 500 companies from 20 different industries worldwide with their innovation routes. So we want to give those companies access to innovation in more and more locations. So our goal is within the next 3 years to have one location in each major European city, to open a door for the local ecosystem, to enable businesses like the shipping industry to have a conversation with the automotive industry, like players like Daimler and co, to kind of learn also from other industries and adapt technologies that had been successfully implemented there to successfully also implement them in their own.
Okay. Haymon?
Yeah, I'm Haymon. I started my career at shipping already back in 2007, so 15 years ago, and started classic with a management trainee program at Schulte Group and helped them merge their ship management companies when they set up BSM. And then I left shipping for a while, set up 2 businesses myself, so I became an entrepreneur. And then in 2019 was asked to co-create INNOPORT, which is the corporate venture capital arm of the Schulte Group. The Schulte Group, many of you will know it, of course, has its core business in ship owning and ship management, but in addition also has built up over the last 20, 30 years a very broad portfolio of service companies, a lot of ancillary services that support the ship management side. In 2018, we then created INNOPORT to work closely with startups early on in their lives, so usually at seed stage, because we said we can give them an entrance into market, help them find product market fit, give them access to a broad network. So we invest globally, as I said, early stages, seed stage, pre-series A, and then become an active investor, and that means we really support them wherever we can in their journey. So what is entrepreneurship? For me, obviously, adding to what Isabelle and Sallar have said, it's really the drive to create something new, to challenge the status quo, and to create real value. So that, of course, means that you need to understand the problem that you're solving and to find the right solution. And that you need to obviously combine with, obviously, the gift to really build a team that can navigate all the challenges that will be thrown your way when actually growing a startup. Question, where do we want to be in 3 years? Well, over the last 3.5 years, we've built a portfolio of about 16 companies, and we're going at, I think, similar speeds forwards. So we're looking for the best companies in the maritime space that support our group. And I think we would be very happy if a third of those companies that we invest in will actually provide technology and work with one of our business units within the group.
Lucius Bunk. I started my shipping career a little earlier than Haymon in 2004, bit of a side route, studied philosophy, economics and Chinese, and was not too sure what to do with it and ended up in shipping. I wanted to work and use my language skills in China, and then found a management traineeship at Ernst Russ. Did 2.5 years here in Hamburg, and then went out to Shanghai. Sadly, no longer possible in the same way than it was at the time. And that is as a side note, but it was a wonderful 2008 to 2010 spell. Taught me a lot of about the trade, and then started my own company. Auerbach Shipping. We decided to focus on the space of heavy lift, general cargo vessels, built up a fleet of 15 ships over the space of 10 years, and used the cycle last year to divest quite massively. Only 2 ships left now. And just prior the COVID-induced spike, I was asking myself, what to do next decade. Do I really want to continue restructuring talks with banks, fighting for survival, or is there maybe something else in the bag? And that's when we got together with some Berlin-based serial founders, and thought that there is space for some additional digital ideas, and co-initiated company builder Flagship founders. Have meanwhile started 3 ventures, and on the 3-year goal that I have to answer at the end, I will then tell you where I want to be with this. In terms of entrepreneurship, I think a lot has been said already. Personally, I think you have to always be curious and on the hunt for new ideas. Naturally, you have to challenge the status quo constantly, reprioritize, willing to basically ask hard questions. I also think that you need to be ready to jump, to dive, unknown. And then lastly, and I think that's quite important, you also have to let go and move on. Find the right timing to move on to the next idea. Cycles are short, and it's really important to kind of keep your ear on dynamics and developments. Next 3 years, well, it's twofold. As I said, on the shipping side, we heavily divested. We want to use the cash to kind of go back in, because we feel that there will be opportunities coming up. Markets have changed quite massively already. And regarding Flagship, the idea would be to have an ecosystem of maybe 8 to 10 ventures, different verticals in the maritime and logistics space. Hopefully work together with fellow panel members here to strengthen the German cluster. So much. So
thank you. Now I would like to open a little bit a discussion here, maybe starting off with the topic entrepreneurship again in general and the challenges within shipping. Me, myself, I have in 2018 co-founded the company that I'm now working for together with a very experienced entrepreneur, Rickmers. I personally believe, coming from an entrepreneurial family from my mother's side as well, I personally believe that the shipping world and the shipping industry is a very entrepreneurial playing field, with still being probably the majority of the industry either family-owned or family-owned and family-run. So my personal opinion is there's a huge opportunity out there to also start something new. But for some reason, and I want to discuss that now as a first topic, for some reason, when we look at startups and where unicorns, so $1 billion plus valued companies, have been founded over the last couple of years, there is, to my knowledge, but my panelists can correct me, there's none coming out of shipping. So what does it really take, or what is very special for starting out a company in the shipping world? Maybe, Haymon, you start first.
Sure. So there are a lot of challenges starting within the shipping space. So we have on one side very few VCs that look at at the maritime space, and that of course means that there's also little venture capital. We have seen more and more corporate VCs sprung up in the space, including ourselves, of course, but also more generic VCs as well, and that of course leads to the problem that that we have fewer maritime startups. What's the real challenge?
Maybe I can jump in.
Sure,
and then,
please jump in.
Yeah. In terms of, I think size of market is certainly a challenge. Yeah. I mean, when we look at different ideas, and this is what Company Builder does, basically going through a rigid ideation process and then coming up with ideas pre-seed to then continue moving forward. We often just hit a wall when it comes to market size, and that's, I think, also part of the problem why VCs are not willing to actually look at the market, because not the typical metrics apply. And it's a very heterogeneous market where still a lot of people are not willing to do first moving, more like, it's a bit of a saying in shipping. I don't know whether you guys agree, but I think there's a bit of this first mover disadvantage, fear, hesitance. So it takes longer, and I think that's one of the reasons why we are not quite there yet.
Can I just add some? Yeah,
of course.
Okay, I fully agree actually with you both. I think, I mean, maybe one point I would like to make is that I'm not sure everyone is aware of the definition of a unicorn. So that means that you reach revenues of about 100 million, and if that's not the case, you're basically not anymore on the radar of a VC, because their strategy is that, or not strategy, but the basics behind is that you need to pay back the whole fund with only one investor. They need to naturally look at very big potentials. Now, having said that, I wouldn't argue, and probably you agree with that a company who does maybe 60 million in revenue and a 10% EBITDA margin is not a good company. It's a great company, but there's a bit of a lack of finance for specifically these kind of companies. And adding to actually what Lucius said also on the market size, that's not the problem, but that's a bit the challenge, because as you say, you quickly hit the wall, because shipping, it's our industry, but still from their perspective, it's a niche industry. So I think that's one of the reasons why bigger VCs don't really consider it super attractive. But I'm very happy that we have industry capital that is being invested, and I think this is also a big opportunity for the industry, because the industry understands also the startups, the industry understands the problems, the solutions. But I think that's the challenge why the big ones actually don't really look at it.
Yeah, but I think the market size is sometimes also an issue why we need the industry capital, right? I mean,
yes, exactly.
we have a lot of solutions that target ships. We have 50,000 ships in the market. We've got 1.7 million seafarers. For generic VCs, that's just not a very big market, right? And therefore, we need the industry capital. And that's why it's good to see that we do have more and more corporates actually jumping on that.
I agree as well, but and then there's another thing, like talking from a VC that is based out of Silicon Valley, the difficulties I have to convince my IC in the US to invest into a startup from the maritime space, and I love investing into them, and I would like to invest more into them because I know the space, and on the other side I'm also biased because I'm passionate for that area. But then I have to invest to convince the IC over there to understand the market first, and they don't understand necessarily the shipping market like we do. So it's a very fragmented market, and it's a market that you, as an outsider, to get into, both sides, from the capital side as well from the entrepreneurial side, it takes time, it takes a certain effort to wiggle through, and then on the other side as well, until we reached a point internally, because we are the first maritime program also in the world in Antwerp that we launched, and it's the time that we needed to explain the market to our investment committee now reached a point that they say, okay, good, so we're coming to the market size question now. So what is the next market? So they're starting, so they would rather invest or only invest into ideas that have the potential to also conquer other markets than just the maritime market. And this is like from a VC perspective, like that the experience that we have at least.
Yeah, and that's where I feel it's not necessarily a necessity to convince VCs to come into our space. I'm fully with you, Isabelle. I personally feel there is so much qualified capital, and not just industry, but also other high net worth individuals, family offices, etc., that in fact look at healthy returns, but they're not unicorn hunting. And the unicorn hunting, the issue with it, I mean, from my perspective, and I'm not a VC specialist, but for over the past 3 years, when I looked at like their business model, is one where you always account for a lot of failures for like one company to actually make it through. And the question really is, when you build up a portfolio, whether you cannot say, listen, we go a little bit closer to the money, we go for safer bets, we don't do the 60 million is a nice return as well. And if we have 5 companies out of 10 that actually manage to do that, rather than the metric of 1 out of 10, and that has to be the unicorn, I think that probably should be the approach in our space, because I believe it's going to be difficult to convince VCs also in the future, unless there is an idea where you can then say, okay, but it's also relevant for aviation, or it's also relevant for rail, or whatever, where you just make the story bigger. And I'm not sure whether like a lot of the ideas that we have lend themselves to these kind of expansions.
I think it's a very interesting and important point to say that the parameters are a little bit different within shipping, but I like the factor of saying that it's more about the responsibility of the industry to support. I mean, all of us here have a history within the industry before maybe going out and start something on the tech side for the industry. That the element of having access to the industry is important to be able to grow a company sustainably from the start. And the funding for that needs to understand that. And that's why I guess international capital players are not that comfortable with it. From my end, and we also, out of our company, have invested in a few companies at a very early stage. It is a huge opportunity because you're not in competition with the big venture capital firms, because they don't know how to grab what is happening in the industry. So I actually like that fact. And I'm also a big fan of sustainable business models. So maybe let's switch a little bit the topic and discuss the market out there, and the market of what is going on and where are opportunities. So the first 2 topics that come to my mind are for sure digitalization, but what does it actually mean, and what kind of project does it lead to? And then the big topic of ESG. There's obviously a lot of innovation going on with regards to energy efficiency. We have the social component, and we probably also have the governance component, but maybe Isabelle, you start here.
I think from our perspective, we combine the two, so digitalization and ESG. As I said, the Turtle is a marketplace for seafarers and shipping companies to connect directly. So one of the main drivers, I mean, obviously as a marketplace, you create more efficiency and transparency, but the third topic became quite prominent, which is related to human rights of the seafarers. So it's about self-determined search, first of all. There's no middleman in between, but it's also about, free, so MLC compliance that you can do, and track much better with digital tools rather than, manual transactions. So I think the answer, or basically what we do, is to use digitalization in order to, solve also some of the, in our cases, the S and the G issues that are still out there.
And what is it for you guys? What is the topic we should look after?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think there are a lot of opportunities in digitalization, but maybe we can also distinguish a bit between digitization and digitalization. So in shipping, a lot of processes still fairly analog, so there's digitization of making those processes digital. That happens and still needs to happen quite a bit, but obviously then taking technology and really disrupting the process, how we currently do them using technology, like this turtle. That is, digitalization, there are even more opportunities in there, I believe, and those that create massive value. Otherwise, following on from a lot of panels today, I mean, we spoke a lot of new fuels and propulsion, etc. I think we should also look at what we can actually, what we can do now, not only in 5, 10, 20 years down the line. And there are still a lot of operational inefficiencies in shipping, and there are data-driven solutions out there, so digital play, how we can improve those, how we can tackle those. Because yes, we can obviously target to decarbonize by 2050, but how about we try now to save 5-10% fuel consumption in the vessels, and we already are a step closer to where we want to be. And there are certainly solutions out there, but there's always the challenge: how do we actually get them to enter the shipping industry? And the sales cycles that you mentioned are long within the industry, and there are various reasons for that, of course. But there are certainly a lot of opportunities.
Sallar, what do you think? What is the trend?
I wouldn't necessarily look at trends. I would look at the purpose of why should I, work with companies that help me to innovate or to digitalize or digitize. And I think if you look for the reasons and the purpose why you're doing this, actually really asking yourself, you can find it in every industry. So we had the human rights aspect and the safety aspect. We have the sustainability aspect, but then we have the business aspect, which means efficiency, cost saving, etc. So if you list those down, everything, and you put it in one package, it means like, how can I make sure that my company still exists in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, etc. in the future? And everybody is currently asking, like this question. And I think everything that helps you to achieve that, which is in shipping, to be honest, it's a lot, especially on the digitization side already. Like, I bet 4 out of 5 people will find a fax machine in the office here still. And I really ask myself, why do we really need that still? Like, is that, like very, very simple things, up to obviously robotic process automation things to automatically process invoicing, or for example, the salary payments of the seafarers, etc., and what else. So I would really not necessarily look at trends. Obviously, we all have to look at the environment and do everything on that side, to be honest. That's my personal view. But then everything that helps you to achieve that mission, this is something to look at and like open the doors for open innovation, external innovation to come in.
Yeah. Lucius, how do you?
Well, a lot has been said. I mean, maybe just shortly, I think the drive for digital is always connected with optimization of efficiency, which will have some component of ESG. I think when we look at starting new companies, and as Sallar rightly put, if you want to be there in 10 years, if you want to attract employees that are passionate about your company, if you feel that is a long-term sustainable business idea, the ESG issue has to be addressed. But I think the digital solutions as such that we all are looking to support will pay into this in some way or other, and to look at it and try to maximize that impact is certainly part of the mission.
And now let's maybe ask the question for concrete opportunities within the landscape, and maybe also within the German maritime cluster landscape. So do you see anything very interesting we should follow, where we should have a look at? And maybe if there's nothing, what is on your wish list of what can, one obviously interesting company is already represented here. So the question is really, is there similar to other entrepreneurial clusters? We have Berlin, we have California, we have Asia, etc. Is it something similar here in shipping, or is it because we have a global industry that it's quite something global from the outset? Or is there a chance for local success?
I think it's less a question of kind of telling you about specific individual ventures that are like the new star on the horizon. I think it's really nice to see over the past 3 to 5 years. That's my perception. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, but that the cluster is growing, that there's in Germany also like strengthening, and also the interest out of the industry is kind of growing month by month to get involved, not only as a user but also as an investor, which is nice to see, because like 2 years ago, and I think it partly certainly has to do with the question of capital available, but 2 years ago people would smile and say, you know, go play and let's talk in 5 years, and it's different. It has changed. People are now willing to kind of look closer, and that can strengthen an ecosystem, and I'm pretty confident that we will continue to grow over the coming years, and that could be a factor to kind of keep Hamburg where it has been, an important center of maritime business.
Yeah, I would agree that it's definitely growing. We don't see that active ecosystem building that we, for example, see in Singapore in the maritime space. So it's growing more organically, and maybe also on various themes, because we have upcoming regulation like CAI, EUTS, etc. And I think any technology solutions and changes will probably rather grow out of European startup ecosystems by nature of it. And Hamburg has definitely positioned itself quite well, I think. And we see, more startups and growing interest from the industry and investors, and those are obviously the ingredients that we need for the cluster to grow further.
I think if you want to attract startups, no matter where, you have to create opportunities for them. And I think we've seen this in Stuttgart, where Stuttgart was not necessarily the place for startups to be honest. And we started with them in 2015 when Daimler asked us to come over and open an office there to focus on mobility, so innovation within the mobility industry. And we had very, very quickly Porsche join the show, Bosch, ZF, and all of these suppliers and everybody in the ecosystem. And at the beginning, there was also big noise and big question marks. Why is a competitor joining this platform? Why are competitors now working together? The board was really like kind of becoming loud, and then we tried to convince them that it's okay. Yeah, you're not sharing the secrets with each other. You're actually looking for opportunities to invest together, to make things quicker, to collaborate on very obvious things, there's a lot of obvious things within the maritime industries to collaborate on. And I think if you want to create like a cohort, and by the way now, I think we have over 30 partners there, and I think we have accelerated more than 500 or 600 startups with a very high implementation rate. And I think if you want to create an ecosystem, let's not talk about such a big platform, just an ecosystem where startups come up more and really feel welcomed. We have to talk about collaboration, open communication, and not be afraid to communicate it to the outside. So it's not you were just saying at the beginning, like the shipping industry is very known for letting other people do the mistake first until they kind of try to do it. Within the startup industry, it's okay to fail, it's okay to do it, and you have to be aggressive to really make a change, and also to motivate entrepreneurs to come up with new ideas, because the time you will save time on inventing things in-house compared to kind of other entrepreneurs who within a year come up with a solution that can really help you within the organization and save money, save time, save a lot of sweat.
Maybe just to add that I think you need, for a startup, for every company, global talent. And I'd say, for example, why Berlin also became so great is because it was, very hip to live there, and then Rocket started its business there. But I think by now, to be honest, Munich has become a bit more, when it comes especially to the B2B, more sophisticated as a startup also ecosystem, but that's basically also due to the TU München. So they have a very good university. They have also Susanne Klatten with Unternehmertum who are fostering. So there's a very, creative international environment. We also have an office there. So I had, I think, 3 people from the TU, all from 3 different countries. And they are, they come to Munich because that's actually, and to Germany with it, because that's actually a very good environment to to one, the education, because TU München is one of the best universities, but also then to work in startups, because that's what many young people want to do now, instead of, at my age or time, it was industry, consultancy, investment banking, whereas now, working in startups has become quite attractive for young people. So I think this is what Hamburg is a little behind, at least when it comes to the comparison of Hamburg and Munich. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think very interesting discussion so far. At least that's what I believe. So maybe we add some questions at this point in time from the audience that we may answer.
You all commented, probably correctly, that shipping likes to have people make the mistakes first. All of you were doing sort of very different things, which all seem to have good value propositions. Could you give us a little more detail to what some of the pushback you hear from those our industry are? Because we're probably all quite a bit older than all of you people up there, so we're probably more skeptical. But I'd be curious to hear really about some of the more concrete pushback you've gotten, for I think are all good business concepts, and how you've overcome those. These case studies effectively.
I can start. So, as you know, I work for 12 years now in shipping, and one thing I totally underestimated is, change management. So I think we talked about the long sales cycles. That was, for us, it was rather quick, I'd say, to in the initial stage to find customers. But what we really see is that, shipping lacked also innovation in the last years, and I think this was also partly due to, a lot of cost savings, because that was the focus. To really handhold very properly in order to manage this change is quite a challenge, and I totally underestimated that. So we're investing much more in this, what we call customer success, because I think if the protagonists, if you want, like your customers, do things in a certain way for a very long time, then it's a kind of habit, and the change process. I see you nodding. Just takes a while. Yeah, I think this was my biggest, or is the biggest challenge.
I fully agree. I think that's the key challenge. People get inspired on your first talk. They think, okay, that's great, that's new. And then you have multi-layers in a classical ship owning company. It's not sufficient to convince the owner, because in the end, if you your company, the crewing operator will then also need to really be the driver of change, and then the operator needs to want to do it as well. So the conversion, the initial, yes, I sign up, I want to do this, and then actually getting it implemented is two completely different things. And that's something where we are still learning, to get that sales cycle short, to get the conversion rate proper, to kind of get those people on board that are so skeptical because I've done it for so many years. And it is challenging because there's so many different systems and, API challenges in terms of how can that new data structure be communicating with the rest of what's going on in the business. So that I think is number one. I agree.
Yeah, certainly. Apart from that, some challenges that we see is also when trying to introduce technology, sort of who pays for it. Because a lot of the solutions that we see coming to market it's expected that it's paid by the owner. Maybe data is provided by the manager, but in the end, the charterer profits from it, who pays for the bunker. So there are a lot of questions around that, and a lot of challenges when introducing those solutions. So I think that's one. And then on the other side, generally the sort of this fairly complex industry, or very international industry, with a lot of stakeholders with sometimes very different or conflicting interests. One example, let's take crew certificates. Everything is paper-based, could be digital. In other industries, it is already long gone that they digitalized all that. But to actually get all the stakeholders to agree on a format and on an implementation, because you've got the issuing authority, you've got the flag states to endorse them, you've got port authorities to need to accept them, you have the ship managers, the charters, etc., etc. And as I said, conflicting interests, because some even have no interest in transparency in that. So that that definitely causes pushback as well.
We have only, yes, please.
So going back to your comments about uniform tracing and issues not being available, a lot of people not understand the space. I'm not clear where does capital come from that can fund maritime stuff?
Well, corporates for one, right? I mean, we see, startups in the seed phases, the capital they need, it's the starting capital can come from corporates. The money is there, and we see more and more VCs spring up from within corporates. Sometimes starting with accelerator programs. We've seen some in Singapore, some here, or in the European ecosystems, and more CVC. Some just investing off the balance sheet. So I think that is one. Secondly, and then obviously depends a little what the technologies the startup is developing. We see sometimes startups that have a technology that can be used in a different industry, maybe with none or little adaptation. And those that actually have a sufficiently large market will also have a good chance of succeeding with generic VCs, financial VCs. So the capital on one side, yeah, definitely just classic venture capital and smart money from the industry as well.
The good thing, Nicolas, is that the industry is earning money now, so there is money available. So therefore, the timing is good now. Yeah.
But what we see in addition, for the early stage at least, that digital entrepreneurs find it quite interesting and intriguing. They have money available. They know what signing up angel tickets means. That's again early. I think you have to look into pre-seed and then Series A, Series B. But looking at the early stage, there's quite a lot of money also from investors that have made their money themselves in the digital space, and they're like, this is uncharted territory. Shipping, wow. And then they want to understand, and that's the curiosity that we spoke about earlier. They're entrepreneurs themselves, and they're like, why not take a bet and go ahead? So that at least what we have experienced recently, apart from the industry capital, there's quite a lot of money coming from Berlin startup ecosystem.
And what I would also add is the stakeholders of shipping, because as shipping as an industry, it plays a crucial role in supply chain overall, as we have learned in many ways over the last 2 years. So everybody connected and being indirectly involved with shipping is now also looking at it and has it on their radar. So you see from the logistics side, so everything in terms of new solutions that somehow helps to bridge these elements from shipping towards other sectors is very supportive. And I know it's a trend, and I get your point, Sallar, but the ESG topic is also supportive for many solutions, because funds, when you look at the so-called Article 9 funds that specifically have defined the investment targets, they are now supporting, because money is flying in, they are now supporting efficiency solutions. So I think there are many ways to attract capital, but the challenges remain. So, thank you very much from my end. Thank you very much to all the panelists.